Hello, welcome back. It's time to talk about my 2022 TBR audit, where I look back at 2022 and the books that I said I wanted to read then and discover whether or not I've read those books or if they're still TBR vets. Did I own them? Did I unhaul them? Do I still have them? And all of that jazz. So let me go ahead and get started. I have my notebook here in which I have started collecting all the information on all the books that I owned from the time that I created this notebook, which I think was some point last year, because I started realizing that actually physically having the books written out was more helpful than having them in a digital collection. And I've just arranged the notebook here so that it tells me what year I added the books to my TBR and most likely what year I bought the books in. That starts to get a little sketchy until about 2023, but let's go ahead and talk about what I have discovered in this notebook for the month of July. So in 2022, in the month of July then, I added 18 books to my TBR. So 18 books that I said at some point I want to read this book. And for me, I prefer to own the books that I read. So at some point I would want to actually physically purchase them as well. Of all 18 of these books, I have ended up only DNFing one of them, which is pretty good for me. I have no problems with DNFing books, and so that happens quite frequently. The book I DNF'd was Gilead by, is it Marianne Robinson? I'll put the book up on the screen and it'll have her name on it. I will also link in the description box below, or just put in the description box below, the title and author of all the books that I mentioned. Anyway, this book I read and I wanted to read because it was very hyped. It was talked about a lot on BookTube, which was what I was mainly watching at the time, and it's still the way I get most of my book recommendations if I take them. And, you know, everybody was just saying how they really liked the story, they really enjoyed the book. I believe she won the Pulitzer Prize for this. I don't recall. Anyway, I tried the book. I found it really slow. I just wasn't getting into it. And I realized I just really didn't care or feel invested in the topic of the book. And therefore was like, why am I going to spend my time reading this? And books being hyped and my not caring about the topic is going to come up pretty frequently in this video. So that's the one book that I DNF'd out of all of these, and yeah, let me look at what else happened to some of these books. There are 4 books from this list of 18 that I read. The 4 books that I read are The Trees, Bleak House, 4321, and that makes it 3. I swear there was a 4th book. Oh, Cassandra at the Wedding. Okay, I was getting confused because I also unhauled that book. But anyway, The Trees, Cassandra at the Wedding, Bleak House, and 4321 are the 4 books that I read. Of those 4 books, I think I still own all of them except for Cassandra at the Wedding. No, okay, I was right. I did get rid of Cassandra at the Wedding. I liked it. I thought it was really interesting. I read it for my family book club, but when I was done, I was ready to let go of it. The Trees, I do still have. I did read Bleak House. I still have that because right now I'm keeping all of my Charles Dickens book, but my favorite out of those 4 that I've read so far is 4321 by Paul Auster. I've mentioned this book multiple times. It was a book that I chose just because I was really interested in the topic. I had read another book, Life After Life, that was about sort of just reliving your life and how small changes could make your life turn out differently. And I wanted to read something else like that. So when I found out about 4321, that sounded very similar and I figured I would probably like that. I had also heard about 4321 because it was a book that comes up when people mention mammoth books. And so that brought it onto my radar, but it was really the topic of the book that made me want to read it. And that is also going to come up again in this video. Okay, so unhauled. These are the books that I unhauled. This is far and above the biggest category out of the 18 books that were on this TBR. So there are 10 books that I have unhauled. And as I mentioned, one of them, Cassandra at the Wedding, I have read. All the rest of them were unhauled either after DNFing them, like Gilead, or I never attempted reading them, or I started them and then went, no, I really don't want to read this. So I'm thinking about revisionaries in terms of that last one. So I guess I should technically say I DNF'd that one as well. Anyway, one of the things I noticed when looking at the books that I had unhauled is that They all fall under similar categories. I bought all of them used, so I know I was able to return them to the used bookstore and exchange them for book credit to get other books. And I'm almost positive that's what I did with those books, because I got to the point probably a year or two after owning them of realizing these aren't books that I think I'm ever going to read. And the reason I know that that's mostly true is because when I look at them, there are a lot of historical fiction, and there are a lot of books that I know I heard about just by like having other people say, hey, I read this book and I love it, this book is great, that kind of thing, which is funny to say as a booktuber because I do that all the time. But I feel like I also try to share why some people would like them or who I think would like them and why you might not like the book. And I've realized that's really important in my own book buying journey because, I don't know, it took me a while to realize that someone just saying that this is a really good book or a book winning a prize or being beloved by masses of people is not a guarantee that I myself will like the book, and especially not that I'll like the book enough to want to keep it. And that tends to be true of historical fiction. I tend to like historical fiction. I don't tend to love it. It doesn't tend to make like my books that I want to have in my collection and buy a hardcover edition and love for the rest of my life and reread a zillion times. Like that's pretty rare of historical fiction unless it's a subgenre of historical fiction and there's some other genre over it. I don't know why, that just happens to be the way it works for me. I also noticed that with a lot of these stories, not only were they hyped, not only were quite a few historical fiction, but when I go back and look at what some of these books were about, I'm like, these aren't topics that I would normally want to read about or normally would find particularly interesting. And so not that these are bad topics by any means, not that these are even bad books, but just knowing my own personal taste as it's developed over the years, I could see how each of these would be books that I would be likely to just keep skipping over. Like if I went to create a TBR either with or without my game, that I would be like, not that book, maybe something else on that shelf. Like, do you do that? Do you have books like that on your shelf that you keep like skipping over? And not because you're intimidated, not because you want to read it but it's too long or like you're just not in the right mood, but books that you're like, I don't know if I do actually want to read that now that it's sat there for a while. That's where these books fell. So I think some of them probably got unhauled during my move when I moved around a couple of years ago. I feel like I keep mentioning my move as if like I just recently moved. It was actually a few years ago now, which is crazy to think. But anyway, when I did go to move a couple years ago, I did unhaul a lot of books. I unhauled books that I had read and just knew I would never reread. And I did get rid of some books like this that were books that I was like, I don't know that I'm ever going to want to reread that. And I also knew that some of those books were popular enough that I'd be able to buy them used again when I moved, or I would be able to get them out of the library and that kind of thing, in which case it would be cheaper to just rebuy them or to get them from the library than to actually pay to physically move them. So that's kind of how I made that decision. So finally, for the remainder of this particular TBR in this month, I have 5 books that are still on my current TBR, and let's take a look at those. I feel like I'm kind of split on how I feel about these books, and I decided the way I'm going to talk about them is from the ones that I think I'm least likely to pick up and enjoy to the one that I'm most excited about. I've also noticed that there's something that all 5 of these books have in common, and hopefully I'll remember to talk about that at the end. But the first book is a book that I do own, I've held on to because it is a topic that I think I'm interested in, and well, that I know I'm interested in. However, it's written in a writing style that I know I'm probably not going to like. So I feel like this is a book that's at risk of being unhauled. Like if I was really firm with my idea of doing a, these books will implode or explode or self-destruct by the end of the year, this is one of the books that probably needs to go on there, and that is A Book of American Martyrs. Now, this book is specifically about, how is it described on the back? This is about 2 families. It is about the conflicts within the families, between the 2 families, and it has a lot to do with the pro-life and that kind of movement and that kind of thing in this book. I think both families and even some of the family members fall on the 2 different sides of that whole equation and that whole conversation. And I really feel like I want to read about that. And I'm hoping that Joyce Carol Oates will have done a good job. That said, I have read one book by her and tried at least one, if not two others, and I'm not a huge fan of her writing style. And I've also started to learn that while she's not afraid of controversial topics, I don't know that I personally like the way that she handles them. So this is definitely the book that of these five am probably the least excited to read, and I'm the most tempted to unhaul. And I have to say, if I run out of space on my bookshelves and I'm looking to like just finally let go of a book to make room for others, this would probably be the one. If you've read this book and you think it's great and you love it, let me know. I do also feel like maybe I need to do like an official read or unhaul where I just spend a week at least trying these books. Anyway, let's go on to the second one. The next one is Almanac of the Dead. This is a mammoth book, as is a book of American Martyrs. That's the thing these all have in common. They're all rather long books. But this is one of the longer ones. I guess it's just 800 pages. Just 800 pages. But anyway, this one is a topic that I'm also really interested in, which is why I've been keeping hold of it. It's also a book that's kind of difficult to get a hold of at times. Like, I do not see this book on the shelves in bookstores. Even when I bought it, I believe I had to like order it online. And most of these books have come out years ago, so it's highly unlikely you're going to find them in stores. And I think I picked them up at the time because it was a moment where I could grab them and I just didn't want to pass it up. Anyway, this is a, if I recall correctly, this is an alternate history of the US where Native Americans are, I think, the overarching culture and government system. I could be wrong on that. But I do know that it is about like the clash of two civilizations, two cultures, that kind of thing. And it's also set in the Southwest. I have heard really good things about this book and what this author does, but I also know it's more of a postmodern writing style. At least that's the impression that I have gotten from different things that I've read about it. That also does not always sit well with me. So again, it's a writing style that I'm not sure I'm going to be crazy about. I have tried starting this book a couple of times, but again, it's one that I just frequently find there's something else I would rather read. So I don't know if that's going to keep happening. I think I'm more likely to continue to hold on to that one for a while over a book of American Martyrs, but we'll see how that goes. The next book is an author that I have read from before. In fact, this book itself would be a reread for me, and I've gone back and forth over the years about whether or not I think I would really want to read it, and that is The Crimson Petal and the White. This is a book that I have heard other people talk about since having read it myself. I read it like probably 20 years ago, literally. And a lot of people seem to really enjoy this book. It is another mammoth book, like I said, pretty much all of these are. This one runs almost 900 pages long, and I do recall really liking the story. I also recall that despite it being a mammoth, that it moving along pretty well. I did recently try another work of Michel Faber's that I thought I would really like. It was more science fiction, where this is historical fiction, and I did not like his female characters in that book. So I'm not sure how I'm going to feel about this book, since I'm pretty sure the protagonist in here is female. If you have read this book recently and would like to leave your thoughts on it in the comments, I would really appreciate some thoughts as to whether or not you think it's worth my giving it the time to reread it. I remember virtually nothing about this story, which is why I want to reread it. I do recall liking it at the time. However, that was so long ago. Like, tastes change, and also some books don't hold up well over the years. So I don't know. It's a reread. I want to reread it. It seems like people still really enjoy that book, so it's still on my shelves for now. The next two books are books that I know for sure I'm going to read. Like, I don't have any doubt about the fact that I am 100% going to try these books. Whether or not I like them, I don't know, but I definitely plan on reading them, and like, I think that could happen within the next year. The first one is Cutting for Stone. I realize I'm probably not giving you guys like a great shot of any of these books. So there you go. This is one that I have just heard a ton about. I feel like he won an award for this book a few years ago, and that everybody who read this book like loved it like sliced bread, and it was just their buttered toast in the morning. Like, I don't know why. I don't know much about this. I believe it's another family story, unforgettable story of love and betrayal, medicine and ordinary miracles, and two brothers whose fates are forever intertwined. And so, yeah, a story with brothers. I don't feel like that's a story that I read about too often, except I feel like the next one is also a story of brothers. Anyway, like I said, everybody seems to love this book. This is a book that I picked up because it's hyped. It is also historical fiction. It's kind of on the long side. That does worry me a bit. It does make me think that it's probably just going to be like a 4-star for me, but it is one that I definitely want to try, partially because his book that has come out since then, I can't remember the name of it, but I'll put it on the screen. That is a book that I'm even more interested in plot-wise than the plot of this one. Will I like that any better? I don't know, but I don't want to buy or try that book until I've read the one that I own. So we'll see what happens with that. And then the final book, like I mentioned, is like another family story. Also, I think mainly having to do with the brothers, so I think it also encompasses the rest of the family, or maybe 2 families. There's a lot of families going on in this story, because even Almanac of the Dead is about families and relationships. But this one, I think there's definitely a possibility of getting a 5-star read out of this, and that is East of Eden. The book that I feel like every time I mention it, people are like, Nicole, you've got to read this book. I do, and I will. It's also a family story where like the people in the family are not getting along at all. And I don't tend to like that in books. I like stories about families where maybe there's conflict, maybe there's argument, maybe there's chaos and drama, but it's not the families just hating on each other and being awful to one another. So I don't know how I'm going to feel about East of Eden. I do like John Steinbeck's writing style. Like, I don't think it's the most beautiful thing that I've ever written, but I think he has beautiful moments. And I think he has a really nice, clear writing style that communicates his intentions very well. So it works well for me. At some point, I will pick up this big chunky book. We'll see when that is. So those are the 5 books that I still have remaining off of this TBR list, and books that I have owned for I don't know how long, but have wanted to read for at least the last 4 years and still haven't read them. So yeah, at some point I need to read these books or just get them off my shelves. And I'm thinking I might have to start doing that on a monthly basis, because the number of unread books is just going to go up and up and up. And yeah, even if I just dedicated 1 week to just starting these books or trying them out or reading one of the books, it would just make space on my shelf or give me another like 5-star read. At this point, these are all like hidden gems for me. Like, they could be a gem. You may know if they're a gem and something that's worth reading, but I don't know if they are for me because I keep not reading them. So that's it for me. These are the things that are haunting me in my head going, Nicole, read me. And that I just keep putting back on the shelves and ignoring. And I'm going to do that today. So yeah, let me know if you have read any of these books, and yeah, which one of these 5 you think I should pick up first. And maybe I'll take your suggestion. Maybe whichever one gets the most votes, like, or the most mentions, will be the one that I try and put on a TBR sooner than later. I don't know. We'll see. That's it for me today. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.